Hi, welcome to the Parent Empowerment Summit. My name is Andrea Warren, and I am the co-founder. And today I have with me Dr. Barbara Reid. It's a pleasure to have her with us. Dr. Reid is a professor and core faculty member at Cambridge College, where she has designed, developed, directed, and taught curriculum related to health, wellness, and human services for over 20 years. Dr. Reid has also served as an educational consultant for the curriculum based on the featured movie Milton Secret, based on Eckhart Tolle's work on mindfulness, and is researching effective ways to conquer the negative effects of normalized stress in a variety of settings. Dr. Reid, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited about the summit, and thank you for putting this incredible venue together. It's amazing.
Well, we are glad to have you, and we are our first topic. We're going to have two conversations. So just so everyone knows, this is just the first of two, and the second one's going to even be better. Well, I hate to say, I'm a little biased because I'm a Eckhart Tolle fan. So we're going to go into that curriculum that you developed for Milton Secret. So make sure that you join us for the second talk. But today we're going to talk about something that so many families are facing, and that's stress in the family.
Yes, we are. And so I'm going to just switch over and share with you some slides that I put together just to kind of guide us in this process.
Wonderful.
And we have here, bear with me just from 1 second. So, yeah, Andrea, I'm actually really invested in this topic because I feel like so many families are dealing with so much stress, and to the point I feel like many people just can't figure a way to get out of it. So I think that just maybe starting with the levels of stress that so many people are dealing with today, this is not something that's unique to any one set of families or one particular population or geographic location or socioeconomic level. This is unfortunately the situation that pretty much everybody across the board is dealing with. And if you're a parent, of course, you know that there are a lot of things that are pulling on you, that your overall family, the construction of your family, however it is, by the way, that you define family. This is not family according to the way somebody else has defined it. It's who we consider to be our family, what the quality of our relationships are, our kids, their school, their homework, their peers, worries, expectations. And then we have life changes and transitions that we may have dealt with a loss or a divorce. And then we have what our friends are expecting of us. Then we have work and other kinds of commitments in our lives. We have finances. We have our physical and mental health. And many people just even find the ability to say no is a real source of stress. We have the environment. And then there's an unending litany of distractions from the news sources, from technology, media overload, and it just goes on. And most people feel that there's just no end in sight. And at the same time, our kids are experiencing equally significant levels of stress. They have home, they have their family, that would be us, their parents, right? And sometimes we feel like we're not a stress to our kids, but we are. And oftentimes it's just because they feel what we're going through. And even though we do our best to shield them from it or try to make up for it in different ways, it's still something that they feel. And they also then sometimes feel even a sense of responsibility, or that they've got to take care of it in some way. And we'll get a little bit more into that. But then they've got whatever level they might be at. There's the work in school, there's their assignments, their teachers, expectations. And then a really big deal for kids of many ages is the way that they fit in with their friends. What kind of relationships are they? Do they have friends in school? Are they feeling left out? Are they feeling maybe bullied in some way? Do they feel safe? Do they feel a part of school? Is a good place for them to be, that they can, really tap into their own potential? And then depending upon the ages that kids are, a lot of them are concerned about things connected with the future. Sometimes they're connected about even their body image, the clothes that they're wearing, how they appear. And then if there are physical or mental health concerns, whether they're theirs or they exist in the family, those are also things that are pulling at them. Social media, unfortunately, has become a very, very big source of stress. And again, it depends on the ages of kids, but this is, again, another very significant stressor for kids. The thing that I mentioned, but even sports, when kids are in sports, there's all sorts of demands on their time and the way that they're going to show up. So there's so many expectations. And how do we handle it all? And this is true for both adults and for kids. It's like, if we're looking for the magic wand to come and make it all go away, I don't see it showing up in the near future. So you might ask, Andrea.
Yes, I was going to ask. And because I think too, and I'm glad that question came up, is so many people define stress differently, and you kind of went through a litany of things that are stressful, but it'd be great to have sort of a clearer picture for not only, I think, parents, but I think for kids that are going to watch this, like what is stress?
Absolutely. And the thing about it is without going through all of the physiological responses that do happen to us, I think there's a couple of really, really key points here. And it's when we feel like whatever the demands are in front of us and our own ability to cope with those demands, to meet them in some way, is what causes stress. And it creates this feeling of threat, like, oh my God, I can't perform. I can't do it. I can't add another thing on. I'm not going to be able to get to my appointment on time, or I'm not going to be able to finish my schoolwork. I'm not going to be able to live up to my teacher's expectations. And the thing about it is it doesn't matter in our brains. It does not matter whether this is a real, quote unquote, threat, like something that's objectively measurable and we can see that this is a real threat, like you're going to get hit by a car, or if it's the perception that you're feeling like you can't deal with the situation at hand. So our inability to meet the demands that we're perceiving are in front of us. And one of the ways that I oftentimes will illustrate this even with students is you can imagine walking down an aisle, say it's a dark aisle, say you're a woman or say you're younger, and all of a sudden you start to hear a noise. And your mind can start to literally run away with you to the point where a minute ago you might have been just walking, and now you're feeling an increase in your heart rate. You might have a little bit of sweat going on. You might be feeling dry in your mouth, or you might have picked up the pace, or you might feel a tightness in your jaw or your neck. And you could turn around and see that there was a cat that just hit a can, and that there was nothing of any danger behind you, but it didn't matter because in your mind, you created this scenario and it felt threatening.
Right.
And the real problem here is the fact that this stuff it's not just in our minds. We don't just have an emotion. These thoughts, these feelings, these emotions end up inside our body. There's real biology that takes place here. Now, let me just back up a little bit. So there's different types of stress, right? There's a good stress, like, okay, hey, I just tried out for this part in the school play and I got it. That's great. It's positive. It's usually kind of something that's short term. It gives us energy. It might improve our performance. And we feel like we can handle it. We might feel a little stretched, but overall we feel pretty good. Then there's the distress, which is the stuff that's not so great for us, where we feel like it's not adding energy, it's actually taking energy away from us. It doesn't feel good. It can be short term, but more often than not, it ends up to be long term. And it really impacts the way we're able to show up and do the things that we need to do. And it can drain us both mentally, physically, and emotionally. And it starts to feel like we can't handle it. But the key here is our perception. So Henry Ford had said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And we've seen this all the time. There are some people who have a situation that comes up and it's like, hey, no big deal. You know, something, let's say something with technology, not necessarily my strongest suit. And, you know, if I feel like, okay, I've got to master this thing, I might get very, very stressed over it, where somebody else would say, hey, I don't know it, but that's just a challenge. Let's go. Let's figure it out. And it's the same set of circumstances, maybe even people in the same conditions with the same level of skills and abilities, but two different ways of looking at it. So perception is really what matters when it comes to our level of stress. And this one here, this chronic stress, which is the stuff that most of us feel on a day-to-day basis.
How did you get a picture of me? I did not know that.
I snuck in.
I had no idea.
But this is the thing. This is the stuff that kids feel, that adults feel, that execs feel, that workers feel, that, you know, and everybody in between. We live in this environment, this culture that has made this very, very normal. And we start to feel like the switch, if you imagine, stress is actually something that's good for us. If we didn't have any stress, we wouldn't get anything done. It's good for us. We need it. But what we don't need is this kind of stress where it's stuck. If you imagine it's stuck in the on position, and no matter what you do, you can't turn it off. That's what this starts to feel like. And it's chronic and it's toxic. So it has all sorts of effects on our body. It has huge implications for our brain, for our mental health, our physical health. We might get everything from, you know, increased heart rate, high blood pressure, headaches, dizziness, panic attacks. We might feel like a knot in our stomach. Other people might feel like that dry mouth where everything feels like cotton and you can't quite get it together. And it also is really important. People need to understand this part, I feel, is that it causes inflammation in our body. Inflammation, by the way, is linked to every single major disease that we have, including things like depression, which most people don't realize. So the more stressed we are, the more inflamed we're going to be. It has huge implications for all parts of us. But even, you know, to joint pains and the way our hormones are operating. And when we are in that middle of that stress response, it's also important to know that all of our non-essential systems shut down. This is probably one big indicator as to why we have so many digestive problems in this country. You know, the bulk of people, when they go to see their physician, regardless of what they're going for, end up reporting problems of digestion, constipation, diarrhea, and everything else in between. And so people start to feel that I love this, there's only 2 times when I feel stressed, day and night. And it's normal. And this is a problem. Like, as you had mentioned, Andrea, I've been teaching in this area for about 20 years. And I started to notice some things over time is that, and it's shifted. It's shifted. So we've gone to this kind of chronic stress, which is definitely a problem, very toxic to our ability, not only for our health and physical health, mental health, but our ability to have quality relationships with people. It really makes a huge impact. But this idea of normalized stress is when we're in it so much, we just assume that it's the way life is. And we forget what really feeling relaxed what that experience feels like. We don't have as much joy in our day-to-day activities. Some of the things that used to make us feel happy, we don't even respond to. We never feel like we have enough time. And we've just become very accustomed to being stressed to the point where we're somewhat desensitized. The other really important thing is, because I also do quite a bit of work with health professionals and surgeons and trauma teams and whatnot, very, very competent, capable people. And there's this belief when you're in this state that you're actually doing better than you are. And I think this is very, very true for parents. I think that we often feel like we've got a handle on things, we're managing to get everything taken care of, but the fact of the matter is oftentimes we're not doing as well as we think we are. And in fact, I know for myself, if I'm in that state where I can still get caught up into this, and you ask somebody around me and they'll say, oh no, she's pretty much running on empty, kind of stay away. And this stress that we're experiencing is contagious. As we mentioned, brain functioning. There's a whole huge body of literature talking about the impact of stress on the brain, but physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, schoolwork, performance, decision-making, and very importantly, our relationships. Stress can pretty much impact just about everything. And this is such a key thing for trying, when you're working hard to raise kids, to give kids a good environment, to take care of their needs and create a good family life, that when you feel like you're swimming in this kind of stress soup, it's so hard to feel like you can create a healthy family.
I have a quick question for you there too, though. Do you think that we live in a culture now, though, and I see a lot of women that do this, where when you brought up the not saying no, right? Do you think we've made it where we are constantly loading more on ourselves and have this expectation that, oh, we can do it all, and if we don't, it's sort of, you're shamed for it? And then again, this starts this whole, like you said, it's contagious. But I think as women, we've done that to ourselves. We just, oh, I can do 6 practices, and I've got 4 kids, and do you see that in your work, where we seem to have some disconnect there, where how much we really can sustain that level?
I think that's absolutely, completely on point. And I think also that it's not just us, what we have to say, which we'll talk about in a second, and our own thoughts contribute tremendously to this. But frankly, almost everything in the environment supports that kind of thinking. Like, you need to do more. People go into work and things have been downsized and somebody left. And so now we not only have our job to do, we've got somebody else's job. Things are challenging in the family, and somebody all of a sudden is laid off from work. That adds another level of stress. Or jobs change, or location changes. There are so many things. And then, of course, we get sabotaged, I believe, and bombarded by things in the media and messages and images that always are reinforcing that we are never enough. And our kids pick this up.
Right.
So kids are looking for the next brand name, this, that, and the other thing. Why? Because somehow it's going to give them better status. It's going to make them feel better. It's going to, and the whole thing with social media, like I said, I feel like we could talk about this for forever. And there are some great things about social media, but I think that there are also some really challenging things. And I think when our sense of self and self-esteem, and this is particularly true with kids, relies on how many likes we have or what people are saying or not saying about us, I think we're getting into some really dicey area. And I think it's created a unique set of challenges all by itself. But I want to quote here Mary Oliver from this incredible poem that she wrote. And if you haven't read it, I suggest you check it out and take a look at it. But in essence, what she's saying in this is like, you've gone through your whole life and everybody is kind of pulling at you and tugging at you and telling you, hey, mend my life, fix me, help me. And then all of a sudden there's this, and it happens differently for different people, but there's an awakening where all of a sudden it feels like, as she says, one day you finally knew what you had to do and began. And then you went on to say, and you began to really save and change the only life that you could, which is your own. And I think that's another big thing for so many people, is that we believe, and we have a positive impact on people, but we somehow believe that we can change others. And once we come to that realization, not easy to do, by the way, it really does make a difference. But I want to just start off with one really important thing, and that's, before we launch into everything, is let's take a deep breath.
That feels good.
It does, because we live at such a pace and in such a way that if we don't intentionally, consciously choose, we're all breathing, but to really take a breath, feel it, like everybody right now, just for 1 second, take a deep breath and let it out. And just notice what that feels like in your body. Like, it didn't take long. It was just a matter of seconds, but it creates a space. And we can all make better decisions and have better quality relationships and do better in our lives when we've got a little space. We all need that. So, I think when we're talking about this, it's so important that remember this is not just us, because it's easy for us to relate with what we're going through.
Right.
This is also really, really important to recognize with your kids. There was a study that I was just reading recently, and I can't remember if it was done through the Mayo Clinic or Harvard. I can't remember who had done the study now, but what they were saying is that we as parents oftentimes don't fully recognize the stress that our kids are under. We think that we see, because stress is one of those things that sometimes it's very physical, you can really see it, and other times you can't. So we need to be aware that the people around us may also be experiencing. Now, we want to be careful. We don't want to project onto them that, of course, they're stressed, but I think it's a safe bet these days to make an assumption that likely your kids are feeling some level of stress. And this is something you can check in with them. And it may not always be this conversation of sitting down. I tell people one of the things that I do with one of my classes, I've been teaching this class on self-care for helping professionals, and I teach mostly adult learners. And we do this very simple exercise, but they literally go through magazines. They do a collage on the things that are stressful in their lives. But what's really telling about that is we do it in a relaxed way. We sometimes put music on, but it's a way we're not having people write and they're not talking. They're just finding images that depict what the stressors are. And sometimes people are quite surprised that that new baby or that great new job or the idea that I really want to buy a house. It's the first time anybody in my family has actually bought a home. And it's wonderful, but it's also really stress-provoking. So
Now, I'm sorry, real quick. Are there some ways that we can see how how these stresses affect our kids? Or are there some things we should look out for? Like, what if you have a child? And I think a lot of people deal with that. I don't have a kid that talks so much.
right.
He spends hours in his room gaming or, on the computer. How, as parents, can we maybe say, hey, this is a red flag, or I see this is affecting my child this way, and maybe have those conversations?
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point, and most people do know, and we'll just kind of recap briefly here. Is like dramatic changes in behavior, whether it's patterns of eating, the friends that they're hanging out with, behaviors like if you had a kid that was pretty social and now all of a sudden is in their room nonstop. Now, part of that can be developmental changes and can be normal part of development, but there are other places where you start to see things like if they're on things like social media and they're so focused on that. And while not every kid will be talking, and that's why I mentioned even the collages, what other ways can they be out and expressing themselves? So I remember I used to work as a therapist at this program, and the kids, teenagers, they never really sat down and talked. But man, you go for a walk, you go get an ice cream, or you go do something else, or you're playing a sport, or you're engaging in some other kind of activity, and you're opening a door so that these kids can start to maybe say or maybe express something. Art is really one of these great kind of things where kids can, and they may not do it for you, but even when they start to realize, you take them to a Michael's, or you put some materials out there and they start to, do poetry, or maybe they write music, or you provide outlets and opportunities. I think one other really big thing with kids is getting them involved in other things. So it's not completely all self-centered, but there are ways that you can get them to be involved with other people, which is huge benefits. Maybe even one of the things that they were talking about in terms of building resilience with kids is, creating memories, creating happy events that, maybe you take some silly selfies and you do things that are not the norm, but it provides a connection and a way for you to be getting more connected with your kids. But going back to this, I want to point out a few things here connected with first us as individuals, but also in terms of this is something that you can then model for your kids. So this idea of awareness, paying attention to what's going on for us, paying attention what's going on for our kids. I would still suggest making at a point to talk, and it doesn't mean that you're sitting down having a therapy session, but that you're still talking to your kids and creating opportunities. If you've got animals, use animals. That's a great way to, interact. But when we start to have an awareness of our own self and saying, wait a minute, I can start to feel when my breath is way up here, closer to my neck and almost into my face and out my mouth and not down in, say, my belly. It's like, okay, I'm starting to feel stress. When we start to be aware of it, most people have completely forgotten what their body even feels like, minus like aches or pains or something. But
Right.
we can shift our perception. This is one of the key things here. Shift your perception. Let stress be informative. Let it be information you can use. Let it be helpful. It's like, wow, I'm starting to feel really stressed. Stop, breathe for a second. You know, and I'm going to share a very simple formula that has been very, very transformative for myself and for many other people. Just look at your thoughts, your feelings from a place of being curious, not judging. Just being curious. Like, I found myself getting aggravated at my husband the other day. And it's like, where is this coming from? Why am I upset? Turns out it had nothing to do with him. It had to do with some kind of trigger for me about something else. But if I didn't pause, I just would have launched into, you know, some kind of argument over something that really absolutely had nothing to do with him.
Well, that's got to really help the parent-child relationship when you say like you just did, because that what a great point of, as parents we get triggered, right? And our first reaction is go at the kid. But if we have that mindset, wait, let me get present for a second, take a deep breath.
Yes.
Wow, how the view changes. So what a great point to bring up. That's excellent.
So I have to give credit where credit is due. So this very simple formula, which has been very transformative for a lot of people, it wasn't Jack Canfield's initially. It was from a therapist that he had known, but I got it definitely in terms of some work that I'd done with Jack, who I definitely consider a bit of a mentor. But it's a very simple formula. E plus R equals O. And what the E stands for is a event. Oftentimes we look at the outcomes in our life, no matter what it is. My finances, my weight, my organization, my family, my house, whatever it might be. And if we say, oh my gosh, I don't like the outcomes, or I'm feeling constantly rushed, I don't like the outcomes. The events are things that rarely can we change. You know, if I walk out the door and all of a sudden they're digging up my street and I didn't know it, and now I have to do a detour and I have to go all the way around, it's like, well, I can't change that. If it's the weather, if it's politics, if it's something in the environment, you know, in the moment, I can't necessarily change that. But if I don't like the outcomes, one of the things I can always change is my response. Now, what most of us do is something happens and we react. So when I first show this equation, like to my students and to other people, it's like the first thing they think of is, oh, it's how we react. In most cases, they're actually right that our reaction does oftentimes impact our outcome. But the empowering thing here is when we take responsibility and we say, wait a minute, I have a choice. It takes a split second. But we can really change from going to a reactive position to responding. And it's different. So I think of this great little vignette that was in Richard Carlson's books, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Love that book.
Yeah.
It's a must read for everyone.
I totally agree. But this one particular little scenario stuck with me for a really long time. And he said, when people are throwing things at you, like things are coming at us all the time from life, like, you know, that visual I showed you before where we've got all this stuff that's coming at us. And we often feel like, well, we have to shield, or we have to throw back, or we have to respond in some way, or whatever. And we forget that doing absolutely nothing, taking a breath, is an option. And so one of the things that stuck with me about that is that you can turn sideways and let it go by. And it was like, oh my gosh, I had such one of those moments where that image just stuck with me forever. So sometimes when I'm in the midst of something that gets heated, I might sometimes sit on my hands because it reminds me I can let it go by. Or sometimes if I'm standing up, I might just turn and put my hands to my side and let it pass by. We don't have to respond or react to every single thing that comes our way. It's just not something we have to do. We think we do. And I can tell you from being in a marriage from a really long time and being in a lot of different relationships with a lot of different people for different reasons, whether it's work or kids or whatever, oftentimes what provokes us is the need to be right. I'm right, and I'm going to prove it to you right now. Right. Versus, okay, I might be right, and I might know it. However, what do I really care about? What's the outcome I want for this day? I really want to have a great day. I want to enjoy the afternoon. I want to enjoy going out to dinner. I want to enjoy the people that I'm going to be with. Maybe I keep my opinion to myself and just allow the other person to have whatever thoughts and feelings they're having without responding. I'll tell you, can make a huge difference in the times and the quality of relationships that you have. This can happen with your kids, can happen with your significant other, can happen with your family members, extended and close. It can really make a huge difference. Now, there's another part to this. In Jack's book, The Success Principles, and for those of you who don't know Jack Canfield, he was the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series and umpteen millions sold, and I can't even tell you, I know it was more than 80 different languages and countries that it translated to. Incredible impact. But he also wrote this book called The Success Principles. And one of the things that he starts off is these two pieces. And so the other part of this is if we take a stance like I'm 100% responsible for what happens in my life. And a lot of people, myself included, when I remember first hearing this, kind of railed against this. It's like, are you kidding? I'm not responsible for the current state of the world. I'm not responsible for, if I've gone to the doctor and I've gotten a bad diagnosis. I'm not responsible if somebody, spoke to me and really ticked me off. Well, this idea of being 100% responsible is both good news and bad news. The good news is if I am 100% responsible for my life, then I can change it. The bad news is if I don't like the outcomes in a particular area of my life, I'm responsible. And even if you don't buy this, which I get that some people feel like, you know what, I am not responsible for that car accident that I just had. I am not responsible that I just got this particular diagnosis. The place where it's empowering is if you take this stance and you act as if you were responsible, what could you have done differently? What would you do differently now? That changes everything. It's like it switches the leverage, and we now have a more empowering stance. Like, okay, maybe I'm not responsible for what that idiot just said. But if I were, maybe I would just let that comment go. Or maybe I wouldn't have been hanging around that person before. Or maybe I wouldn't have watched that movie, which I know I'm not going to like, or turned on that channel, or whatever it might be. It's empowering because we realize we have more options than we think we do.
That really allows us to break that cycle, right, too, of what we've done for so long. It's so habitual. What a great technique and how to do that. Do you have more that you can share with us? Because I know you are a wealth of information.
Well, I think that, to me, I think one of the biggest things is really our thinking. And this is why I think this is such a key piece, is when we start to feel more empowered, like we have more control over our lives, because frankly, a lot of us don't feel it given the circumstances that we're in. Right. And I love this quote from William James. It says, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over the other. Wow. So you think about this for a second, and we all know people like this who they've gone through something really devastating in their life, and yet they are putting it to good use. I mean, devastation. And one of the things that comes to mind, and I hope this is not something that anybody here has experienced, but sadly it could be, is I'll never forget this one moment I met at this conference we were planning on suicide prevention. 9 months earlier, she had lost her son. He committed suicide. And here she was. And if you saw these pictures, this kid looks so happy, so likable, so great smile. You would have thought there's nothing in this kid's life that's wrong. And she didn't see any, there were no typical signs. But internally, he felt this level of desperation. But here she was, not even a year later, and she's at this conference saying, I am going to turn this into something so that my son's life has incredible meaning and a lasting impact, and I don't want anybody else to go through this. And she chose to take her thoughts, and as opposed to saying, I can't, and who would blame her? This is so devastating, right? But she was able to choose a different path, a different thought, a different course of action. Incredible.
You see so many people that do that. And I think of somebody from many, many years ago, because I grew up in the town not too far where it happened, was John Walsh. And after he lost his son and what he did, the impact he had on missing children.
Right.
And I mean, decades and decades. I mean, those are the people, and I'm a firm believer, and I know people cringe when you say this, but things happen for a reason, even the bad stuff, because like this woman and like him, and I mean, we could probably have a laundry list of people that we've seen make these amazing contributions to society after some sort of devastation. So that's
absolutely. But as you just pointed out, it's a choice that we're going to either think the worst or the best, and it's easy. Let's face it, we live in a world where it's so easy to talk about the laundry list of everything that's terrible and going wrong. So it's one thing to look at the really big things in life, but the stuff, frankly, that really gets us and really causes more stress and keeps that switch on in the on mode is the everyday, day-to-day things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the guy didn't come to fix the washing machine. See, it happens every time. Just when I've planned it, I've stayed home, I've gotten this, and we go on and on and on. Or, I get frustrated because I'm doing something on the computer and then something takes longer than I'm expecting. It's like, and then you look at the guy on the left here, it's like, I can't do this. It's like, I'm so stressed out. I couldn't do this before. I can't do it now. I never do anything right. Or, what sometimes we say when it comes to self-esteem, and these, by the way, are completely applicable to our kids as well, is that nobody likes you, you're not any good at this, you're not accepted, you're not cool enough to be hanging with these kids. But we as adults have those kinds of thoughts that run through our mind. And these are not things we consciously decide to think about. That's a whole different kind of thing. But what does happen is if we consciously decide to say no, notice the things that you are saying to yourself. Just notice if you are in that space. And frankly, it doesn't mean everybody's there, and it doesn't mean this is an issue for everybody. But more often than not, in my travels over the years, I think everybody has some element of this. And it might be just situational. Like, overall in life, I am good. I'm full of self-esteem. I've got confidence. I'm a great parent. I'm doing the best job I can, and you feel wonderful, which is great. And then maybe some little thing happens. Maybe it's connected with work or connected with a family member or some other situation. And all of a sudden, in a moment, you start to maybe doubt yourself just for a second. And then it can turn into this whole downward negative spiral unless we intervene and we just question ourselves. It's like, wait a minute, is this thought adding to my stress or adding to my quality of life? And I'll say this with my students and others. It's like, if it's not contributing to your quality of life, you really might want to question where this came from. Frankly, a lot of the negative stuff we say to ourselves is something we heard from somebody somewhere in the past. And who knows, even if you give the benefit of the doubt to saying, well, maybe at the time it was true that I was stupid because I did A, B, or C. Is it true now? Is everything that I do stupid? No. Look at all the things that we have done. So I love this slide because it's like, I'm a survivor. I'm valuable. I'm giving. I have a great sense of humor. I'm considerate. I am compassionate. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. I'm a student. I'm a learner. I'm a teacher. I am a great friend. I am awesome. I am cared about, and we don't say these things to ourselves nearly enough. I saw one of the coolest art projects, and I can't remember the name, but I'll try to send it to you later on, Andrea, where somebody had taken something like this and they had done it with kids, and they got to choose all of these words that depicted them, and then they did it in this paper mache kind of wheel and all these different colors. I thought, man, what a gift to give any kid to sit down and to do something like that with them. And they have this constant reminder in front of them about how fabulous they are, because life is full of opportunities that remind us that, oh, well, you're not really quite enough. And I just feel like this is one of these gifts that we can give to ourselves, we can give to our kids, we can give to our significant others. I can guarantee you that if you start pointing out to the significant people in your life and in your family the ways in which you value them, the things that you're grateful about them, the unique qualities that you see in them, the strengths, you will get an entirely different response. It just happens. But that's a different kind of energy. I'm kind. I'm compassionate. You know, and even I love some of these, like, I'm mischievous. Sometimes I'm not perfect. I love it. Nobody is perfect all the time. And that's actually one of my attributes. I'm not perfect. I love it.
I love the one that said, I'm a work of art.
Yes.
I love that. I think every parent, I'm going to encourage everyone that's watching to print this slide out and maybe do something like this with your kids. Like you mentioned, what a great time to sit down, and maybe your teens will kind of begrudgingly do it. But like you had mentioned, having art, and maybe this is a way, like, hey, let's do this together. Because I think that's an opportunity too, to sometimes have those conversations that kind of come out from spending that time together.
Absolutely. And a great way to do this even is, like, if they have, a friend that they care a lot about and something's coming up, maybe they do it for the friend, but at the same time, you can start to have a conversation. Because sometimes it may be that they're not ready to do it about themselves, and that's okay. You just start wherever there's an opening. So be creative in your thinking there. The other piece that I know that there are going to be some sessions that talk more about mindfulness, but I just really want to, just for a minute, reinforce how important this is, because when you can start to incorporate mindfulness into your own life, just like these little ways where you're shifting your reality and you're shifting your perception, you can start to make a huge impact, and you're giving your kids permission to do the same thing. And just to be clear, I love this quote by Jon Kabat-Zinn. For me, this definition works. It means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the moment, right now, non-judgmentally. Oftentimes it happens that whole litany that both parents and kids are dealing with keeps us from being in the present moment. We've all got so many things that we're responsible for. There's no way you can be present and have that list running constantly in your head. When you slow down enough to get out of that automatic pilot, it can really make a huge difference. So it's the idea of, we're not going to go through the whole of this right now, but I do hope you come and you listen to when we're talking about Milton's Secret, and we'll talk a little bit more about mindfulness. But the notion of observing, we can't stop our thoughts, but they come and go, and we just don't have to get hung up on each one, and it takes us down this other road that we weren't intending to. We can just notice, and we can do it without judgment, which is a lot easier said than done, frankly. But it's possible. And when you start to go down this way, you can really notice a huge difference.
So I love that without judgment, because I think right now we are in to me, feels like the most judgmental time in our culture. And it's, your friends are judging you. And I look at kids, like their friends are judging, their parents are judging, their coaches, and then us too. I mean, it's not just, I think sometimes, as you and I both know, you got your colleagues, you're even your dear friends that you're like, oh, is she judging me? And that plays that negative self-talk reel again, right? And then go down that rabbit hole. So I love that, just having that picture there with the words without judgment. I mean, that's excellent.
Yes, and I'll tell you, and it was also in John Kabat-Zinn's one of his books. I think it was Full Catastrophe Living, or Wherever You Go, There You Are. I can't remember exactly which one, but he talks about like a walking meditation, or using what's around us, right? And like looking up at the sky. And today I'm looking up, and interesting, there aren't any clouds, but oftentimes there are. And just noticing how they keep passing. They kind of come and go. And to me, that image, and remembering that's like my thoughts, they come and go, and I don't have to hop on. I don't have to pull it down. I don't have to write a dissertation about it or create this big long I can just let them come and go. But it's a choice. And that means I have to be open, and I have to be willing to have a different perception. Because frankly, I know when I was growing up, and even as I went through school and a bunch of degrees and all that kind of stuff, I always thought that the more critical I was, and the critical thinking I was about everything and not letting things go, the much more responsible I was. And lo and behold, I learned, it took me a number of years, but it's like, I don't have to do that. And in fact, the quality of my life, and very importantly, my relationships, are so much better when I can just let things be and not have to judge everything. And what I found is that when we are less judgmental towards ourselves, we are so much less judgmental towards everyone else. And that is such a huge gift, frankly, for us and for the other people in our lives. It just creates a different quality to the relationship. So to kind of summarize here, there are so many things that we can do. And I think it starts with an awareness, an openness, and the ability to change, to say, maybe I'll try, let me experiment. Let me just use my own self as an experiment here. Let me just try something. Let me see if I can change. The next time something bad happens, let me see if I can turn it around. Could I change my perception to even like something you were saying, Andrea, like, well, maybe everything happens for a reason, and maybe what I'm doing, how are we doing time-wise, by the way, Andrea?
We are good.
Okay.
Let's go. I know we're getting to the end, but we're doing excellent. I'm sure people are thoroughly enjoying this.
I want to share an important thing. So I had this opportunity to be on sabbatical this past year, and I know that's very easy for me to talk about not being stressed out, but it's amazing the things that happen in all of our lives all of the time. But what it's given me is a unique opportunity. But I'm going to just share this time. We were down in St. Thomas. We had been down there for a bit. It was the last night that we were going to be there. And so I really wanted to be on the ocean, and I really wanted to just have an experience being, on a boat. I love the water, and it was, sunset. We go down there, and lo and behold, there's a glitch. There's some kind of technical problem with the boat. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I arranged so that we finally got the right number of people to go so that we could all go out and have this experience and whatnot. But in that moment, I put this into practice. It's like, I'm going to let it be whatever it is. I can't change this. I can't do anything about it. So I'm just going to be present regardless. And I will tell you that because of that delay, it was about a half an hour delay before we were able to actually go out on the boat. But I had already made peace with this, that if we couldn't, we'd find something else to do. It'd be great. But because of that, we had the most incredible sunset that I have ever seen in, I think, my entire life. And in fact, the captain of the boat had said the same thing. He said, it went on and on and on. Like it was just, had we gone out on time, we would have missed it. We totally would have missed it. But I just let go. And sometimes that ability to let go gives us incredible gifts. So think about that and try it, experiment. Breathe, practice mindfulness. We'll talk more about that later. Andrea has got some amazing sessions lined up here that you'll get so much information on. But pay attention to the things that inspire you. If that one slide where it says I am, and you think of words that even if you're not literally saying to yourself, but you would love somebody to say to yourself, or you inside really feel strongly about, put those up. Have those quotes around. Put images that inspire you. Maybe it's pictures that make you smile, that make you feel happy. Look at them. It's great we have all of these pictures sometimes and we do a gazillion selfies and maybe we post them someplace. But, maybe take time to have a couple around that you look at on a regular basis. The other thing is notice what colors seem to give you an uplift in terms of your mood. What makes you feel happy? Notice lighting. All of these kinds of things are simple, simple ways that do not cost you any money whatsoever that you can start to put into your life that will increase the quality of your own energy and the energy of the people around you. And it'll help you be creative in helping your kids and significant others and other people that you're working with and that you care about to do the same thing in their lives. Surround yourself with supportive, positive people. And you know what? Those people will change from time to time, depending upon different situations. There are some times that my husband is absolutely fabulous. I love him. He is the most supportive person. But he can't fulfill every single one of my needs. And sometimes he's not the best person for me to go to on a particular project that I might be working on. Who do I know that's really going to get what I'm talking about and support me? Or maybe it's my dreams. You still love the people in your life, but just pick and choose and be intentional about getting some of those people around you. Performing acts of kindness to other people, huge release of wonderful chemicals in your brain that help you to feel better, increase your immune system. That's different from being the Mother Teresa of the world. And doing everything for everybody, because oftentimes when we are constantly saying yes to everybody else, we're not ever taking the opportunity to say yes to ourselves. So notice the difference. Like, I just want to do this because it's going to make me feel good too. And I just want to do it from my heart versus, oh boy, I have to do this because they're going to expect that I'm going to do this. And in the end, that's not really going to help. So finding those things that are adding to your life, connect with nature. Even if you live in the middle of the city and you've got nothing but concrete around you, you can look up, you can see a sky, you can look down. Even in cement, you can sometimes find something growing out of there. You might find a bird or an animal, or you intentionally go and you find pictures that inspire you. Can't be at the beach all the time, can't be in the rainforest all the time, but man, when I look at those pictures, do I feel filled up? It's amazing. It just changes things. Help your kids to recognize what they love. I have a friend whose son loves photography. He's created this whole website of images that may or may not speak to somebody else, but they speak to him. And he feels so empowered from building this and putting these images out there. It's amazing. And the other piece that I feel is really, really transformational here is to be able to express gratitude. And I know there's a lot of talk and people throw these terms around, but I can tell you I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm not currently practicing right now, but I can tell you one of the things from doing a lot of years of working with a lot of people in a lot of different kinds of scenarios, that when you start with the people in your life that you care the most about, and you start saying each day to them what you're grateful for about them, the impact in their lives, even for situations that aren't exactly as the way you want them to be. You might have a kid that's going through a lot of really difficult challenges, but that kid's there. You've got that kid. You have another day. You're both breathing. This is another opportunity. The woman that I mentioned about, she had a loss, but she was grateful for that child touching her life and giving her the ability to impact other people's lives. What are we grateful for right now that might not be perfect? I'm never completely satisfied, it feels like, with my weight, for example, or the way that I look, or, my ability to write, or whatever the thing is that might be going through our head. Can we say that we're grateful that we have the ability to get up in the morning, that we have this beautiful day in front of us, that even if it's raining, it's like, I have both my eyes. I can see, I can breathe, I can feel. These are incredible gifts. And when you start doing this, and if you do it out loud with members of your family, and maybe it's not that you sit down for an hour and do this, but you just randomly throw out some of these things, you change the energy, you change the dynamics, you change the experience. And your kids will appreciate it. Even if they don't say a word to you, they will appreciate it. Your significant other will appreciate it. And valuing your family, valuing whatever constellation your family is, no matter what's going on, just valuing it. And the biggest gift really that you can give to your family and to yourself is to be present. It's one of the biggest challenges I think that parents have today, is that we have so many things that are coming at us from so many different directions. And I am not belittling or negating any one of them. You know, I've been in a place, I've had financial challenges. I've had health illnesses and challenges with family members. And there's so many things that every single person I'm sure here has been through. But we're still here. And the biggest gift that you can give both to yourself and to the other people in your life is to actually be there, to show up. There is nothing more empowering and more of a gift than to be able to sit with somebody and feel like they're actually there with you. They don't have to say a word. They're present. So that's where I want to leave you with this, is that I just so appreciate, Andrea, that you've been able to put this together. Thank you for allowing me to share. I feel incredibly honored and privileged, and so grateful for all of the people in the world that are doing such amazing work to shift our reality and make this an incredibly wonderful environment for everyone.
Well, I am so excited that you came on to have this conversation with us. I mean, I'm just trying to take it all in, to be honest with you. I was, following everything you were saying, and I'm so glad we recorded it, because people can go back and listen to the points that really hit them. But before we close, I have one question, and I ask this of all the guests that we have, because again, we went through a long list of excellent points. But I think the biggest challenge for a lot of parents is, where do I start today? What can I do today that's going to have impact? So I ask you, and I know we went from macro, and now I'm saying go micro, and give me a little snippet of what you would say. Okay, mom, dad, or teen, here's where I'll start first.
You know, the fact of the matter is I think there are many entry points, which is the beautiful thing in our life, is that there are so many entry points for people. And I would say to listen to your own self. Just be curious about what you're experiencing. Be willing to be an experiment of yourself. I think one of the biggest things is noticing what your mindset is. Noticing, are you willing to maybe possibly take stress and saying, okay, I'm feeling it. I wonder what I could do. Can you take one deep breath? Could you take two? And I think that's a great place to start. Sometimes it's just the smallest things. What I know for sure is that whatever it is you do today, and anything that we want to continue, it's got to be doable, and we've got to see a value in it. One of the things I just love about breathing, we do it all the time, right? But when you really stop and take a deep breath, you can feel it. Now, sometimes it may take a couple of times to really feel the impact, but breathing is something that puts us back into our bodies. It gives us a moment to pause, and maybe we choose then to respond differently.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And it's simple, like you said, breathing. Moms, when you're in the car line, take the breaths. There's lots of places if you have to do it in the restroom for those moms with the younger kids, if you got to go in the bathroom and take the breath, take it. But that is an excellent, simple tool that parents can start today. Well, I want to remind people that Dr. Reid is going to be with us again on Friday to discuss mindfulness and her curriculum that she developed for Milton Secret and Eckhart Tolle's mindfulness program. So make sure to come back on Friday. Not that I don't want you here every day, but I definitely do not want you to miss out on that conversation with Dr. Reid. And Dr. Reid, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And just in full disclosure, I have to deflect because I didn't solely create any of the curriculum. This has been a culmination of work, and I think the part that's the person who's truly developed it in many ways has been Eckhart Tolle. And I've just served as an educational consultant, but what I have done is really taken the curriculum and the pieces of it and consulted on this, and then brought it to a variety of platforms and locations. So I would love to say that I completely developed it. That's not the case. I've definitely contributed, and I feel like I've certainly given my time and energy in that, but truly it's Eckhart Tolle's work. And I think it's been amazing to really, I love Milton Secret because it's a place where we can just look and see how this plays out in our day-to-day lives. So this was a book that he wrote, a children's book, and it was turned into a feature movie by Barnett Bain and a variety of producers that have been working on this. And it really gives us an opportunity to look at a family, a modern day family that's going through stressors, and to the point where they don't even recognize right away that their kid is being bullied, and then how to start to deal with this. And Donald Sutherland, who plays the grandfather in this, amazing job, amazing. So I really hope that you'll come and have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about this.
Yes, I'm looking forward to having that discussion with you as well. Well, thank you again, and we'll see you on Friday.
Thank you.